Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. A very warm welcome to yet another session of life and works of Advaita Acharyas. And today's session is very special because we are celebrating the 159th birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda and Swami Brahmananda ji, both of whom are were the foremost disciples of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and the initial torchbearers and founders of Ramakrishna Mission and Ramakrishna Mutt. And today we have a very special guest who will be delivering the talk to us, who has taken time, and we are very grateful to you, Swamiji, for taking time from your very busy schedule. We have with us Swami Atmapriyananda ji, who is to give a brief introduction to those who do not know. Swami Atmapriyananda ji is the Vice-Chancellor of Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda University. It's a multi-campus university.
I'm now the pro-chancellor. I was the vice-chancellor for 15 years. Now my term is over, so I have been elevated as a pro-chancellor.
I'm sorry, Swamiji. I was not aware of this. So Swamiji is now pro-chancellor of Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda University. It's a multi-campus university which is trying to actualize Swami Vivekananda's educational vision. And Swamiji has received his PhD from University of Madras in theoretical physics. And he joined the Ramakrishna Order of Monks in 1978. And since then, he has worked as an educationist, as someone who is deeply committed to the philosophy and life principle of Ramkrishna and Vivekananda. And he has written, has number of publications in various journals. He has traveled all over the world and participated as a resource person, various seminars, colloquia, symposia, and many other things. So we are truly grateful to have Swamiji today in our midst and to hear directly from him about the life and contribution of two great stalwarts of Hindu Dharma, namely Swami Vivekananda and Swami Brahmananda. Before I open the floor to Swamiji, let me start with a very small prayer. Om Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guru Ratmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Shri Dakshina Murtaye Namaha. Swamiji, thank you again, and please start your session. The floor is open to
you. Om Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tamhadevam Atma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye Nishkalam Nishkriyam Shantam Niravadyam Niranjanam Amritasya Param Setum Dagadhendhanamivanalam Om Vasato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tena Mam Pahi Nityam Om Shanti 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 Om Shakti Samudra Samuthatarangam Darishita Prema Vijrumbhitarangam Samshaya Rakshasa Nasha Mahastram Yami Gurum Sharanam Bhava Vaidyam Advaya Tattva Samahita Chittam Projvala Bhakti Patavrita Vrittam Karma Kalevara Madhuta Cheshtam Yami Gurum Sharanam Bhava Vaidyam Naradeva Deva Jaya Jaya Naradeva Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine Kalindi Pulla Kamale Madhavena Kridarata Brahmananda Namastubhyam Sadguru Lokanayaka. Today is the sacred birth anniversary of Swami Brahmananda ji, who was a direct sannyasin disciple of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and second in command in the Ramakrishna order. Swami Vivekananda's birthday was celebrated at Tithi Puja on the 25th of January. These two great disciples of Sri Ramakrishna were born just 9 days distance of each other. And both of them were boyhood friends. They used to visit the Brahmo Samaj of Keshav Chandra Sen, deeply involved in the teachings of Keshav, practicing the Brahma Upasana and so on. And they became disciples of this great master, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who picked up both of them and trained them, groomed them, gave them special spiritual power. Swami Vivekananda, as you know, was a person who will not so easily accept anybody. In fact, Narendranath, in his previous life, before he took orders as a sannyasin, at every point he used to argue with the master. Sri Ramakrishna once became so terribly excited. He said, "You don't accept what I say, why do you come to me?" Then Narayan smiled and said, "Just because I come to you, should I accept everything of what you say? I have great attraction for you, your purity, your godliness, your absorption in God, your loving nature. I very deeply am devoted to you. That does not mean that I should accept everything of what you say without testing it properly." And what was Ramakrishna's reaction? Is very happy. Can we think of a guru getting delighted, a disciple talking like this? We normally think a guru is a person who expects implicit obedience from the disciple, and he wants the disciple to totally surrender to him. That's what we normally traditionally expect. And the disciple also does it. Here is a strange guru and a strange disciple who is delighted that the disciple will not accept him so easily. And Sri Ramakrishna used to say, he is like an unsheathed sword, a sword which has been taken out of the scabbard, sharp and shining, and just doesn't care for anybody, will not accept anything unless he tests it himself and realizes the truth of it. Sri Ramakrishna told his disciples to test him, encouraged his disciples and said, just like a money changer tests his coins, test me. You know, in those days, we had the Swarna Mudra, the metallic coins, particularly made of gold and later silver. So you take it and then test it like that. Whether the proper sound comes out, then you know that it is really made of gold or silver. So Ramakrishna used to give this example and say, test me like a money changer tests the coins. And he said, added, look at the expression, test me by day and by night. After having tested and convinced yourself about the genuineness of my experience, you accept me, not before that. That is the greatness of Ramakrishna as a guru. He talked about Narendranath as an unsheathed sword, and he says happily, see, look at Narendra, He doesn't accept anybody without questioning, without understanding about the depths of it. He always is very keen to accept only after testing. And he says he doesn't accept anybody, except me also. Can a disciple questioning the Guru all the time, and the Guru feeling delighted that the Guru is not accepted by the disciple? Can you think of that? This can happen only in the case of a strange Guru and a strange disciple. There is a beautiful verse in the Kathopanishad, Ascharyo Vakta Kushalosya Labdha Ascharyo Gyata Kushalarasishta. Here is Ascharya, wonderful Guru, and Ascharya, disciple, wonderful disciple. Their relationship is very strange. What does the Guru do? We know Ajnanatamira andhasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave namaha. The Guru Gitas are wonderful verses about what a Guru does. Guru removes the ignorance from the disciple by the light of knowledge. The darkness of ignorance is removed by the light of knowledge by the Guru. That is the role of a Guru. Here is a strange Guru praying for a strange disciple that this disciple should be covered with ignorance. Mark these words. He is going to the Bhavatarani Kali and asking Mother, "Oh Mother, cover Narendranath with a veil of ignorance. Otherwise he'll cut the veil and simply get lost in Nirvikalpa Samadhi," from which he came. Sri Ramakrishna had a very strange vision which he described later on. He said, my mind was soaring higher and higher and higher and transcending the realm of the Devatas and even beyond. It entered in the realm of the indivisible, Akhanda. Very strangely, in that realm of the indivisible, which is even beyond Advaita as it were, I saw 7 Rishis, Sapta Rishi, meditating and absorbed in samadhi in silence. See, Advaita is not the last word. Beyond Advaita, there are forms, and it does not contradict Advaita, but it transcends the Advaita, because what we call form and formlessness are only 2 aspects of the same supreme reality. Bhagavan Bhashyakara Shankaraj Bhagavad-pada does not make any distinction between Saguna Brahman and Nirguna Brahman. These are only 2 aspects of the same reality. When you go beyond name and form, space, time and causation, then you talk about it as Nirguna. When you come to the realm of the Saguna, Brahman with the qualities, the same Brahman appears to be with qualities, and the quality is only apparent. Shankara will call it apparent. Shankara will call it a veil of the Maya. But what you call Niguna, Sarguna, Nirguna is the same as Saguna and vice versa. Sri Ramakrishna emphasized this by saying Kali and Brahman are identical. Brahma Shakti Abhed. There's only one substance. You call it Kali when it is sportive, when it is performing the act of creation, sustenance and dissolution. And when it is beyond that, you call it Nirguna Brahman. The Brahma Sutra, in the Chatus Sutra, the second Sutra, Janma Adyasya Yataha. Janma Adi, from whom? Janma Adi means Janma, then Sthiti and Laya. Srishti, Sthiti, Laya. From whom it takes place. Who is that person? He is called Saguna Brahman. The Taittiriya Upanishad, the father is the guru and the disciple is the son. He approaches his father as the guru and asks, "Can you teach me Brahman?" Bhaguruvai varunihi varunam pitaramupasasara adhihi bhagavo brahmeti sagumho vacha. Can you teach me Brahman? He gives the definition of Brahman. Yato va imani bhutani jayante yena jatani jivanti yat prayanti abhisambhishanti tad vijiggasasva tad brahmeti. That from which all the universes rise, in which they remain, and into which they finally get dissolved, knows that supreme reality, and that is Brahman. Saguna Brahman. When Brahman is involved in the act of creation, preservation, and dissolution, it is called Saguna Brahman. And when you go beyond that, it's called the Nirguna Brahman. There is no form, there is no name, there is no gunas. Ashabdamasparishamaroopamabjayam tatharasam nityamagandhavachayat anadjanantam mahatav param dhruvam nichayatan mrityumukhat pramuchyate Kathopanishad. It cannot be described in positive terms. It is described negatively. Ashabdam masparisham marupam madhyayam. That is the Turiya Avastha, which is the Brahman or Atman. Both are identical according to Advaita, as you know, which is beyond name and form, beyond thought, beyond conception. And the consciousness which is outwardly focused, Mahishpragya, is the waking state. Consciousness inwardly focused as the dream state is Antavpragya. Consciousness which is neither focused outwardly nor inwardly, unfocused consciousness remaining in the mass of consciousness. It is in the deep sleep state. Consciousness which is neither outwardly focused nor inwardly focused, nor remaining as a mass of consciousness, that which is the supreme reality beyond name and form, beyond thought and beyond words. Yato vacho nivartante apraptya manasasaha. This Brahman, which can be approximately described as Satchidananda Swarupa, that is the supreme reality, which is the Turiya. Mandaka Upanishad describes it as follows: Na antav pragyam na bahiv pragyam na ubhayata pragyam na pragyana ghanam na pragyam na pragyam adrushtam avyavaharyam agrahyam alakshanam achintyam avyapadeshyam ekatma pratyayasaram prapanchopashamam shantam shivam advaitam chaturtham manyante sa atma sa vigyeyaha. These are very, very profound experiences of the Rishis. But that we call Saguna is also Nirguna. That is the experience of Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, in which is said, these 7 Rishis are sitting there, absorbed in Samadhi, beyond even formlessness. They are the Manasa Putras of Brahma, to whom Brahma taught the Nivritti Dharma. Bhagavan Bhashyakara Shankaracharya, in the Upodkhata Bhashya, Sambandha Bhashya of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Sanakadin Srishtva, having created the Sanaka Sanandana, Sanatana, Sanat Kumara, and 3 more Rishis, Saptarishis, Sanaka Adi, he taught them the Nivritti Dharma, Nivritti Dharmam Grahayamasa. They refused to participate in creation and got absorbed in Samadhi. Then we created Manu, etc., taught them the Pravritti Dharma, the worldly Dharma, Abhyudaya, Dharma Artha Kama. So, Dvividahi Vedokto Dharma, Pravritti Lakshano, Nivritti Lakshanascha. This is the statement of Bhagavan Shankaracharya in Upodkhata Bhashya. 2 kinds of dharmas are described. One is the Pravritti Lakshana Dharma, other is the Nivritti Lakshana Dharma. So this Sanaka Sanandana Sanatana Sanat Kumara and 3 more Rishis, the Sapta Rishis, then Ramakrishna's mind is soaring higher and higher. When he encountered the 7 Rishis, he was wonderstruck. how great must have been their tapasya and their tyaga and their wonderful samadhi, so that they occupy a place much higher than even devatas. Devatas were only big officers. Then at that time, the entire region was luminous with the divine light of consciousness, Chaitanya Jyoti, and a portion of that light condensed in the form of a small child. He is describing his visions, Ramakrishna. And the child went to one of the Rishis, and Swami Sharadanandaji, a Guru Bhrata, as direct sannyas and disciple of Ramakrishna, Guru Bhrata of Swami Vivekananda, says this Rishi is one of the Sanaka Sanandana Sanatana Sanat Kumara. So this divine child put its gentle arms around the neck of this Rishi, and the divine gentle touch of this child, the Rishi opened his eyes and looked at this child, which the Rishi knew was the darling of his heart. They are known for ages to each other. Then this child said in a very sweet voice, which will put even the most melodious veena and inandita kantha is the language used. The same, very sweetly he said, I am going, you too should come with me. The Rishi, as it were, by his smile, accorded assent and again got absorbed in samadhi. Sri Ramakrishna said, the moment I saw Narendranath, I knew that he is come as an incarnation of that Rishi. A portion of that Rishi came down for the good of the world. Later on he said, the divine child was he himself. So this is called the Nara-Narayana Leela. Vedavyasa, the Sarvagya Bhagavan, about whom Shankaracharya speaks about as Sarvagya Bhagavan in his Bhashya and the Gita, to whom we owe everything which we call Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma, the Vedic religion. He is the classifier of the Vedas into four. Veda Vinyasa. So he's called Vedavyasa. He is a writer of the Ashtadasha Mahapuranas. He is a writer of the Mahabharata and the Bhagavatam. What an extraordinary person he must have been. Therefore, the Pranama mantra to Vedavyasa says, Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Vindayata Patra Netra Yenatvaya Bharata Taila Purna Prajwalito Jnanamaya Prasidaha. He lighted this lamp, Prajwalita. What is that? The Bharata. And the greatest flower of this Bharata is the Bhagavad Gita. Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe. His wisdom is infinite, unfathomable, deep as the ocean and broad as the skies, as Swami Vivekananda used to describe the minds of these great men, his own guru and others. So this Vedavyasa created immortal characters in his Puranas, the Nara and the Narayana. The lore says, the infinite, indivisible, Akhanda Satchidananda divided itself, as it were, into two halves. One half was called Narayana, the other was called Nara Rishi, and subjected both Nara and Narayana to eternal tapasya or penance in the Badarika Ashrama. And even now, they are engaged in eternal tapasya or penance at the Badarika Ashrama in the Himalayas, for the good of the world. And they incarnate themselves as avatars in every age. When the Lord came, the Narayana came as Sri Krishna, the Nara-Rishi was Arjuna. When Narayana came as Ramachandra, the Nara-Rishi was Hanuman, Mahavira. In this age, we believe when he came as Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the Nara-Rishi was Swami Vivekananda. So Nara and Narayana apparently have just the opposite nature. They are eternally, inseparably connected to each other and apparently of opposite nature. And Narayana uses Nara for removing the miseries of the world. And blindfolded, as it were, he is commissioned to do good to the world. Nara-Rishi, who was absorbed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, we do not know what these terms mean. We apparently use these words, was brought down from that Samadhi. Down or up doesn't mean anything in that Samadhi, but we are using some terms. He disturbed the Samadhi, brought him down, and commissioned him to do good to the world. And Swami Vivekananda's life was continuous struggle to go back to that state. Many people have misunderstood Swami Vivekananda's statement as being inconsistent. He says many things which are not intelligible to all of us, because our little stupid intellects can't understand the divine truths. We want the logical structure, put them into a logical framework, consistent, and we feel happy. Spiritual truths can never have this kind of logical consistency. Even in the case of mathematics, for example, all of us know how the structure of formal mathematical logic was smashed and broken into smithereens by the powerful theorem called the Gödel's theorem in the modern times. It is Godel, pronounced as Gödel or Gödel. He brought out a theorem which said, in the framework of formalistic mathematical logic, there are certain truths and theorems which are neither provable nor disprovable within the framework of the mathematical logic. Does God exist? Somebody comes and questions us. I ask a counter question. Suppose he asks you to prove the existence of God. I tell him, can you disprove the existence of God? When you can't disprove, I can't prove, let us be friends. There are certain truths which are real, which have been experienced. Experienced by not this mind, but a mind which is superior to the senses. Atindriya darshana. These truths cannot be experienced, cannot be proven by formal mathematical logic, which is formalistic. Those of you who read the book by Roger Penrose, who got the Nobel Prize in Physics a couple of years ago, The Emperor's New Mind, wherein he argues against artificial intelligence. He says how the whole structure of mathematical logic came down with a thud because of this theorem. Bertrand Russell and Whitehead carefully had constructed a mathematical formalistic logic, a formalism which was simply smashed by this theorem. There are certain truths which you can't really prove through intellect. Just the other day, we had the mathematical genius called Srinivasa Ramanujan in India, whose genius was recognized, appreciated by Hardy, who took him to Cambridge. Littlewood was his friend. They were amazed at the mathematical genius of this boy. And Ramanujan used to go on writing theorems in his notebook. Hardy asked him, what are the proof of these theorems, Ramanujan? Littlewood said, you see, my boy, there was a time in the case of Euler, in the case of Jacobi, they could simply write theorems and get away with it. Now no more. Every theorem needs a proof. Unless you provide the proof, your theorem will be rejected as meaningless. Ramanujan very shyly, innocently smiles and says, sir, proof, I see that they are true. Pratyaksha anubhuti. When you see something as true, do you need a proof? Suppose I see you sitting there. What is the proof that I am sitting here? The proof is that I am seeing you. When there is a pratyaksha anubhuti, there is no question of proof. Pratyaksha anubhuti by the senses may deceive you, but there is another pratyaksha anubhuti which is beyond the senses. Lest you confuse it with the pratyaksha anubhuti of the senses, a special word is used in Vedanta. It is aparoksha anubhuti. The anubhuti of the senses is called the pratyaksha. The anubhuti which is beyond the senses, but still pratyaksha, is called aparoksha anubhuti. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Yajnavalkya is being challenged. Can you show Brahman just like you catch hold of a cow, two horns, and say, here is Brahman? Can you show it? Yes, Sakshad, Aparokshad Brahma. Sakshad directly, Aparokshad realizable by a faculty which is beyond the senses and the mind. Swami Vivekananda talks about two kinds of pratyaksha. One is Indriyaja pratyaksha. The second is Atindriya yogaja pratyaksha. Pratyaksha, direct perception through the senses. What are the senses? The five senses of perception. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, through Chakshu, Karna, Nasika, Atvak, Jikhva. This is direct perception by the senses. There is another direct perception which is Atindriya yogaja pratyaksha, yoga janita. The special capacity by which you are able to intuit spiritual truths by a capacity, by a faculty beyond the mind, beyond the senses, beyond words, is called yogaja pratyaksha. Ramanujan says, I can see that they are true. When you see something as true, what is the proof? And then he adds very shyly, Ramanujan is a genius who did not know he was a genius. He was so unconscious, so simple and so unassuming. He said, sir, I have a serious problem in proving these theorems. What is that? The moment I write a theorem, so many theorems keep rushing in my mind. I just don't have the time to prove a theorem. By the time I give the proof of one theorem, 100 theorems are already rushing in my brain. Then Hardy smiles and says, if I have to prove any one of them, whole life will go. Even now, after 100 years, Ramanujan's notebook is being researched into. His theorems are being proved. People don't know what is the proof. Atindriya pratyaksha. Ramanujan also claims that he got these theorems through a process which is beyond the mind. Then Hardy asks him, Ramanujan, where do you get these theorems from? What is the source? Ramanujan very shyly, he says, sir, I worship a goddess called Namagiri Devi, Namakkal goddess, whom he has been worshipping from childhood. That Devi comes to me in my dreams, in a vision, as it were, and then wakes me up and then says, write down these theorems. So I quickly wake up and note down these theorems in my notebook. That's how I get these theorems, from a divine source. You know what Hardy is supposed to have said? Hardy can't deny the theorems and the extraordinary beauty of those theorems. To prove even one of which, a great mathematician like Hardy says, it's a lifetime experience, lifelong effort. Hardy is supposed to have said, this boy is doubtlessly an extraordinary mathematical genius, but hopelessly religious. There are some hopelessly religious people, quote unquote, who are the salt of the earth. If everybody goes through the mind and the formalistic logic and understanding, the world will be much poorer. There is a Ramakrishna, there is a Vivekananda, there is a Swami Brahmananda, and hundreds of saints and sages in this holy Bharatavarsha who actually saw the truth. And they did not compose, they did not write. The Vedas and the Upanishads was not written by anybody. As Swami Vivekananda beautifully said, they never composed, did not write, they never wrote. Then what was that? Music flowed from their hearts. When the heart is full of this divine truth, they simply sang these truths, and the song which they sang is called the Vedas. So the Bhagavad Gita is called Bhagavata Gita. Gita is Gai Dhatu, means sing. The song which the Lord, with the Bhagavan himself sang, is called the Bhagavad Gita. So these are the people who actually saw the truth. Remember, when we talk about mantra drashta, one person is saying, don't make the mistake, mantra drashtas are people who actually see. We normally use the word drashta to see. It's a misconception to think that they actually see, because we don't have any language to use. And therefore we use the word drashta and get confused by saying they also saw. And we are also eager to see something. Many of the spiritual aspirants, sadhakas, are longing to see some vision. Oh, I want to see some vision. I want to see mantra. There is nothing to see. Mantra drashta is a word which is used because you don't have any other word by which you explain this. Do not believe, do not understand that the Rishis actually saw the mantras. They simply arose in their consciousness spontaneously. There is no faculty of seeing, there is no indriya to see. Then how did they know? They knew by some atindriya pratyaksha. Their pratyaksha, their seeing is atindriya. Beyond the indriya, there is a faculty which we do not know what. Just to explain this, we call mantra drashta. Mantra drashta is a very misleading term. Be very careful when you use it. Don't think somebody saw the mantra just like we see objects. It is used just to explain to stupid people like us that they saw in a divine vision. The vision is a very dangerous thing in spiritual life. Everybody is running after visions. I saw God in this vision, I see God in that vision. Be extremely careful about visions. Swami Vivekananda was extremely, he took cudgels against this vision idea. He said, what if Jesus saw God and Moses saw God? Have you actually realized him in the depth of your consciousness? So Advaita Vedanta says it is not seeing. If you see something, that cannot be real. That is Advaita's fundamental position. There is no question of seeing anything, realizing anything. You just realize yourself as it. You are it. Tattvamasi, which has been repeatedly displayed in the Advaita Academy, which means you realize yourself as that infinite consciousness. You don't see consciousness. You don't realize the consciousness. You just know that you are it. That anubhuti, that realization is beyond the senses. There is no question of seeing, there is no question of hearing. Ashabdam, asparsham, arupam, abhyayam, etc. Narupamasya, hatatopalabhyate, etc. And the Gita, even about samsara, even about ordinary things in the daily life. Physics or chemistry or science is says that you can't know the truth behind anything, even in this world, what to speak of divine things. So this Nara-Rishi always accompanies this Narayana. Nara-Narayana Leela is eternally going on. And in this age, we believe that Sri Ramakrishna as the Narayana brought down this Nara-Rishi. There is no down or up, but still we use some words. Unfortunately, we have to use the language and words, and we get confused with the words. To remove the confusion, we use some other language, and the game goes on. So the moment he saw Vivekananda, Narendranath, he knew he is the Nara-Rishi. He took him to a corner in Dakshineshwar in his room, and with folded hands he said, I know, O Bhagavan, you are the Nara-Rishi Narayana. Come down on this earth for the good of the world. Narendranath, hardly in his teens, 18, 19 years old boy, studying in the college. He said, what? This man seems to be mad. I am a son of Vishwanatha Datta. I live in Calcutta. And he calls me Narayana and then Nara-Rishi and all that. He must be stark mad. But he saw Ramakrishna's life, his holiness, his purity, and could not understand consistently what is the statement about Nara-Rishi and how it is matched with his other actions. He later on used to say, I thought he was a brain-sick baby seeing visions and all that. How could I ever know that what he saw directly comes from the command of God? When you read the Gospel of Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita in the original Bengali, constantly you'll say, Mother came and told me how many visions I saw. Remember, these visions are ordinary visions through the Indriyas. And you can't call them Atindriyas also. He says, I just saw them with my eyes, open eyes. So there is a realm, there is a region in which Indriya and Atindriya simply coalesce. And this region is called by Sri Ramakrishna as Bhava or Bhava Mukha. Sri Ramakrishna, when he experienced the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he was brought down from that by the Divine Mother's by command, so that he could not get lost in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and is very careful to see that Narendranath also did not simply get lost in Samadhi, because he wanted him to work for the good of the world, for Jagad Hithaya, for Loka Dukkha Vimochana, for removing the misery of mankind, just like Buddha. Then it is absorbed in the Nirvikalpa Samadhi for 6 long months, it is recorded. The Divine Mother commanded him 3 times on 3 occasions, Tui Bhava Mukha Thak, Tui Bhava Mukha Thak, Tui Bhava Mukha Thak. Remain in Bhava Mukha, remain in Bhava Mukha, remain in Bhava Mukha. It's a very strange phrase, Vedantic phrase, which is new as it were to the Vedantic terminology, but all the incarnations were in that state. What does it mean? The Mukha means the threshold. Bhava is being and becoming. Becoming is called a Bhava. Being is pure consciousness. The threshold of being and becoming is called a Bhava Mukha. The supreme infinite consciousness, which has not taken a form in which it can project itself as the finite, that threshold is called the Bhava Mukha, which means don't get absorbed in the infinite and pass into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Have access to both. Remaining in the Bhava Mukha, Sri Ramakrishna could have access to both the Saguna and the Nirguna, infinite and the finite, absolute and the relative, the transcendent and immanent, this world and the next world, in which both the worlds appeared to him to be real. The borderland from which you could, at moment's will, you could pass into the infinite consciousness, and the next moment he could remain in the ordinary state as it were. Swami Brahmananda and Swami Vivekananda also remained in the state of consciousness. The so-called inconsistency in the teachings of Swami Vivekananda can be attributed to this idea that he was brought down against his wish, as it were, to remain in the ordinary plane of consciousness. At every point, his mind is rushing towards the infinite, wanting to roam in that infinite consciousness of the indivisible Akhanda Satchidananda, indivisible existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. But every point, Sri Ramakrishna carefully brings his mind down to the ordinary plane of consciousness. How many examples are there in Swami Vivekananda's own life? When he was in America preaching, his mind always used to soar in the highest realm. So Ramakrishna was constantly guarding him and bringing him down. Have you ever seen a guru who is supposed to remove the ignorance of the disciple, as I mentioned? Ajnanati mirandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. That guru is praying to the mother, constantly watching over the disciple and seeing to it his mind is coming down to the ordinary plane. He is praying to the Divine Mother Kali, Bhavatarini, Mother, put some Maya into him. Otherwise, he will cut the veil of Maya into pieces and pass into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. I don't want to do that. Let him be in this world for the good of the world. How many times his mind used to soar high? It is recorded in his life. He used to travel by tram car from one place to another. He enters the tram car, completely gets absorbed in some other mood. And when the tram car reaches its destination, the conductor is asking him, "Sir, where do you want to get down?" He mentions the place. "Oh, we have overshot this position long ago. Come on, take the next train and go." He again purchases a ticket, takes the next tram car back. Again, his mind soars high, reaches the destination other side. He's going back and forth from one destination, one terminus to another, because his mind refuses to come down. Remember the difference between all of us ordinary mortals trying to do some kind of a sadhana and the minds of Swami Brahmananda, Swami Vivekananda, what to speak of Sri Ramakrishna and Sarada Devi, his divine spouse, his Shakti. Their minds are constantly soaring high. With greatest difficulty, they have to bring the mind down. Our minds are constantly soaring below, and we have to struggle and struggle to take our mind slightly higher. If we push our mind a few millimeters above, immediately it comes down several hundred kilometers. For them to bring their mind down a few millimeters is a tremendous struggle. They also did sadhana. Sadhana for what? To bring their mind down so that they can do help to the world. This fundamental difference should be noted. So all their actions are just spontaneous. They did not do anything on purpose, thinking by the mind. The sankalpa which they had for Lokasangraha was Isha Sankalpa. It is not individual wish. Jagadhitaya cha, when Swami Vivekananda said, following Ramakrishna, who said, do good to the world, remove the misery of mankind, it was not born of the thought, born of mind. The Sankalpa came directly from Ishvara, which is the state of Bhava Mukha. The Isha Sankalpa. Swami Vivekananda, Swami Brahmananda, of course Sri Ramakrishna and Sarada Devi, always claimed that they do nothing, they think no thought, do no action except that which is commanded by the divine Supreme Lord. We do not know what to make of this. Swami Vivekananda was requested one of his disciples in America, can you come to such and such a place and give some class talks? Swami Vivekananda did not come. He was waiting and waiting. Then he writes in a letter to Mrs. Bull, you see, between you and me, note these words, between you and me, I am a sort of mystic and do not move without orders. He's underlining orders 3 times, and that has not come yet. What do you make of it? Without divine command, he says, I just do nothing. For every point, every act, every action, every thought was driven by the divine. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tasthati bhravayan sarva bhutani yantra rudhani mayaya. The Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, the Bhagavad Gita, to all beings it is true in these cases, they are directly being driven by the command of God. Swami Vivekananda said, directly Sri Ramakrishna is commanding me, he is driving me, he is doing everything through me. One of his own brother disciples, Swami Yogananda, raised an objection to the kind of work Swami Vivekananda is initiating in the Ramakrishna mission. 1st of May 1897, soon after Swamiji returned from the West. Swami Yogananda said, Naren, you are initiating all these philanthropic activities, but Sri Ramakrishna taught us otherwise. Don't get involved in too many worldly activities. First realize God. But is it correct that you're initiating all this? Are you sure that these activities are not the influence of your Western stay, being driven by the Western idea of philanthropy? Swami Vivekananda thundered, how much have we understood Ramakrishna? Even if you can measure the limit of Brahman, Brahman is limitless, as you know, Akhanda Satchidananda Swarupa, Vijnana Khana Ekarasa, so many words, so many phrases Shankara uses in the Bhashyas. Even if you can find the limit of Brahman, you can't find the limit to Ramakrishna's mind. He is infinite, broad as the skies and deep as the ocean. If you try to limit him and keep him in a small cage, I will break that cage and scatter his message broadcast everywhere. What little conception of Ramakrishna do you have? Ramakrishna is the infinite vast Satchidananda present everywhere. What you worship as Ramakrishna in the temple is only one form of Ramakrishna. But the Ramakrishna which you see everywhere as Akhanda Satchidananda, present in all beings. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam chamai pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sajame na pranashyati sarvabhuta sthitam yo mam bhajatyekatvamasthitah sarvatha vartamanopi sayogi mai vartate. Sri Krishna says, the Bhagavad Gita, he who sees all beings in me and me in all beings, and ekatvamasthitah, poised in oneness, in Advaita, yo mam bhajati, he worships me. Very strange statement. This is the Bhava Mukha idea. Otherwise, you can't interpret this statement. You are completely absorbed in oneness. Ekatvamasthitah, yo mam bhajati, who sarva bhuta sthitam yo mam. When he worships me, present in all beings, absorbed in oneness and Advaita, he is a supreme yogi. Pick out such statements from the Bhagavad Gita. Don't be guided by any commentary or any description. Think of independently in the light of these great sayings of these incarnations of God. Independently. Sri Ramakrishna's mind, Vivekananda's mind, Brahmananda's mind, ekatvamasthitah. They don't see anything except God. Swami Vivekananda, how many times he said, I am completely divinely driven by God's command. I see nothing but Brahman. On one occasion, when he was lecturing in the US, suddenly tremendous spiritual power was unleashed from him, and he saw this moment I can throw the entire audience, the 1,000-odd audience, and throw them into the infinite and make them realize the infinite consciousness. Suddenly he left the platform without completing his lecture. Many people said, what has happened? Has he gone ill? And so on. Swamiji was asked later, he said, suddenly a kind of spiritual power gushing within me, by which I saw I can throw these people, this moment, into the infinite. I said, no, Vedanta does not allow this. Everybody has to exhaust his karma and then only go. I should not disturb anybody's karma, path of karma. And therefore I left. Tremendous power was given to him. Another occasion, when he was talking, suddenly the entire audience, consisting of a few thousand people perhaps, found their kundalinis are awakening. Why are they true? Sometimes I wonder. It's not recorded. People who felt it, people who saw it, recorded it. Swamiji himself says their kundalinis were awakened, and many of them lost consciousness, many of them got higher spiritual experience. And later on, Swami Vivekananda says, when they went back, suddenly the kundalini came down with a thud and struck at the Mooladhara. Since they were not prepared, since they were not sufficiently pure, all the impure tendencies awoke in them, and they went straight away into bad ways. So spiritual awakening should not come to you without being prepared, without what they call in Vedanta as Chitta Shuddhi, purification of mind. Nishkama Karma Yoga has been clearly spoken of in the Shastras by all the Acharyas, including Shankara, as a surest means and the only means for Chitta Shuddhi, or the purification of mind. The mind is Shuddha. What is the Shuddha? Shuddha Mana? Shuddha Mana is the Manas in which all desires have vanished. Sri Ramakrishna says, Shuddha Mon, Shuddha Buddhi, Shuddha Atma Tinti Ek. The pure mind, pure Buddhi, and the pure Atman are the same. You may ask, what is Ashuddha Manas and what is Shuddha Manas? Refer to the Upanishad, Brahma Bindu Upanishad. Manohid Vividham Proktam Ashuddham Shuddham Evacha Ashuddham tu Kama Sankalpam Shuddham tu Kama Varjitam. Mind is spoken of as two types, pure and impure, Ashuddha and Shuddha. That mind is full of Kamana, desire, is called Ashuddha Manas, impure mind. That mind which is free of all Kamana, desire, is called Shuddha Manas. If the mind is freed from all Vasanas and Kamanas, this moment you are free. Kathopanishad. Yada sarve pramuchyante kama yasya hridishruta adamartyo mrito bhavati atra brahma samashnute. If the mind is freed from all desires, kama yasya hridishruta pramuchyante, then atra brahma samashnute, atra, here and now. Bhashyakara Shankaracharya says there, atra jivan nevityarthaha, jivan mukta. This moment you become free. Sri Ramakrishna gives a beautiful example. If a room is dark for 1,000 years, if you strike a match or bring a lamp there, will it take 1,000 years for the darkness to go? Instantly it goes. It's called Jhatiti Pratyaya in Vedanta. It goes simply. So Swami Vivekananda's mind was so luminous, always poised in the infinite. About him, Swami Sharadananda, his own very dear brother disciple, wrote a stotra, Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagyaya Yodharma Sthapanarato Piresham Tam Namamyaham. Paratatve sada linaha, always absorbed in the supreme tattva. By the command of his Guru Ramakrishna, dharma sthapana he did. His mind was brought down and made to work, made to do good to the world. That was Swami Vivekananda's mind. How many examples are there? Sometimes he used to be absent-minded. He's not absent-minded. He has to bring his mind down again and again. When he was sitting in a park in near New York, perhaps, the Lincoln Park, then his mind soared so high, he was about to get merged in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Then Sri Ramakrishna appears and says, "Oh, Narayan, not now, not now. You have a lot of work to do." His divine Guru was constantly guarding him, not to liberate him as a Guru normally does, Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya, but to bring him down to the ordinary plane of consciousness so that he can do good to the world. This difference we always remember. Swami Brahmananda's life you can see. His mind is always soaring high up. And he says one place. Many people say the Nirvikalpa Samadhi is the samam bonum and the end of all spiritual experiences. But I think that's just the beginning. Think of this statement. He says Nirvikalpa Samadhi is just the beginning of spiritual experiences. That is the Bhava Mukha. When you attain the supreme state of consciousness and about to merge in the infinite and the formless, by the divine command you are brought to a place in which you can see the formless and the formful, the infinite and the finite, the absolute and the relative, transcendent, immanent, and remaining in the state you do good to the world. Then so many spiritual experiences open unto you. You see everybody with open eyes. One of his disciples was describing to another disciple of his in Belur, saying that the various visions which Ramakrishna had with Gopalayarma, Gopala's mother, disciple of Ramakrishna, who actually saw Gopala moving around, playing with her. These visions, are they in the real world? Are they in the bhava, some kind of transcendental samadhi state? He was trying to explain to the other disciple, you see the various experiences which Ramakrishna had, which Gopala's mother had, these are all in bhava, different state of consciousness. Swami Brahmananda heard it from a distance, from his room, and came out and said, "Oh, I see that you have become omniscient." Then he made a very profound statement, to understand the meaning of which we need so much of sadhana. Show me the line of demarcation where matter ends and spirit begins. What we call matter and spirit are only one substance. Chaitanya and Achaitanya are not two different things. What we call the world is only Brahman. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya is one statement. When you feel Brahman is covered by Maya and the world is Mithya, Mithya is not unreal. That is the mischief made by the Western scholars who translate it as unreal. It is not unreal. Remember this. In Vedanta, particularly if you read the Advaita Siddhi of Madhusudana Saraswati, Mithyatva Lakshana is described. That which is not absolute Sat, nor is it absolute Asat, is called Mithya. It's a technical term which is used in Vedanta. That which is absolute Sat is only Brahman. What does it mean? That which is Deshatita, Kalatita, Nimittatita, beyond space, time, and causation. That is Brahman, which is called Sat. Absolute Sat. Trikala Abhadita Satya. Not confined to any kala, any time, past, present, and future. That which is absolute asat is like the horns of a hare, Shashasringa, Bandhyaputra, the son of a barren woman. There's only a concept. A hare doesn't have horns. A barren woman cannot have a putra, cannot have a son. So how does this? Only words which has no corresponding reality. It's called absolute asat. So that which is not absolute sat, not also absolute asat, is called by a term in Vedanta called mithya. Is it absolute? It is asat? No. This world we see, we interact with this world, it is not asat totally. Then is it sat? No, because it changes. It is not trikala abhadita satya, and therefore it is neither sat nor asat. Sannapya sanna huvayatmikano, sangapyananga huvayatmikano, bhinnapya bhinna huvayatmikano, mahadbhuta anirvachaniya rupa. This Maya or Mithya is described by Shankara in the Vivekachudamani in this verse. So many Satasadhyam, Vilakshanam, Nanirvachaniyam, etc. So the matter and spirit are only the same reality seen from two different angles. If you go to that level, then Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya changes into Brahma Nityam Jagat Leela. The new paradigm which Ramakrishna introduced because of the idea of Bhava Mukha, a person staying in Bhava Mukha is called a Vijnani. So Ramakrishna says, Jnani says the world is unreal, Jagat Mithya. The Vijnani says the world as a different order of reality, it is Leela. The paradigm of Satya and Mithya in hardcore Advaita has been replaced by Nitya and Leela. Brahman is Nitya Swarupa. This is exactly what Shankara also meant. But Shankara says Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, we should not come to the wrong conclusion. He said the world is false. No. Of course the world is real, but not as real as we understand it, but as Brahman. Otherwise, Shankara himself would not have worked so hard. So many bhashyas he wrote, traveled all over India, established Advaita Vedanta for the good of the world. Such a compassionate Karuna Avatara. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram we say. The Shankara is Loka Shankara. Sham Karoti the Shankara. He is doing Sham, good for the world. Karunalaya. He may be Shruti Smriti Purana Alaya, repository of all knowledge, divine knowledge, but he is Karunalaya, so infinitely compassionate. Look at Shankara's own life. Compare it with Swami Vivekananda's life, Swami Brahmananda's life, Ramakrishna's life. You can see the parallel. What is Shankara's first spirit mission in life? Just lead his life. Just a boy, a kid, 5-6 years old. He was invested with the sacred thread. The Upanayana ceremony went on. He has to take bhiksha from somebody. He goes to a house. Bhiksham dehi. Old woman, a widow, comes out. So poor. With tears in her eyes, he says, "Oh, my child, you are Shankara himself." As if the sun has come down on the earth, so bright like a Shatakoti Surya, Koti Surya Prakasha, as if Shiva himself has come down. I have nothing to offer to you. She had one fruit, Amalaki, Nillika we call it in Tamil. She brought that has also become old, slightly rotten. And with tears she gave that Amalaki in the Bhiksha Patra. This little child, he was not famous as the Bhashyakara, remember? So much he was moved by compassion, Karuna. And immediately he prayed to the mothers, famous stotra, Kanakadhara stotra, Angam Hare Pulakabhushanam Asrayanti, the famous stotra which is being chanted now, even now. She invoked the blessings, the grace of Mother Lakshmi. Oh Mother, Goddess of wealth, Lakshmi, why are you keeping this woman in such dire poverty? Do something to her. The power of his spiritual experiences, realization. The roof gave way and hundreds of golden amalakis came down as a rain, Kanakadhara. So what was the first action? He did not write Bhashyas first. He did not establish Advaita. He did not say Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. What did he do? He prayed for removal of poverty. Remember this. The first action of this great Shiva Avatara Shankara was removal of poverty. We should never lose sight of this. When people criticize Hinduism as otherworldly, we should know those greatest avatars were extremely conscious of the difficulties of people in the world. They struggled so much and worked so hard, Shankara himself. If he felt the world is unreal, he would not have done that. He knew the world is unreal in the ordinary sense in which we see it, but world is real as Brahman, as the Adhishtatra, as the Adhisthana, as a substratum of Brahman, world is real. The famous sentence attributed to Shankara in the Prakarana Granthas, Drishtim Jnanamayim Kritva Pashyed Brahmamayam Jagat. Shankara himself says, Drishtim Jnanamayim Kritva. Make your drishti Jnanamayi, knowledge, vision, Pashyed Brahmamayam Jagat. Whole Jagat is only Brahmamaya. You wrongly see it as the world. It's actually Brahman himself is there. So Swami Brahmananda, Swami Vivekananda, all of them had this idea. So Brahmananda said, show me the line of demarcation between the matter and the spirit. How much Sri Ramakrishna cried. And he commanded all his disciples to remove the miseries of the world. So, Girish Chandra Ghosh, one of his Bohemian disciples of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, once went to Ramakrishna's room in Dakshineshwar and saw him crying bitterly. He was so much agitated. Oh Lord, why are you crying like this? He said, you see, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Mahaprabhu, his companion, used to go walking barefoot from door to door, bringing spiritual knowledge and awakening the consciousness of people through Harinama Sankirtana. Whereas Divine Mother Kali has given me such a delicate body that I can't move without a carriage. I could have done so much. She is crying to the mother, Mother, don't make me unconscious. I want to remain in this body with full consciousness to awaken the spiritual consciousness of people. So they shop Chaitanya Ho. That was his last message at Kashipur on the 1st of January, 1886, the year in which he passed away in Mahasamadhi. May all your consciousness be awakened. These avatars come to awaken our consciousness, for which they sacrifice their own lives. Sri Ramakrishna was suffering out of throat cancer miserably. He calls his devotees and disciples and says, if you allow me, then I will give up this body. This terrible pain. Nitya Shuddha Mukta Swabhava, ever pure, ever awakened, ever free. He is pleading, praying to his disciples to release him from bondage so that he may leave the body. What does it mean? That is the power of love, power of bhakti, power of seva. So when you have the power of bhakti, you can simply imprison even Bhagavan himself. So because of moved by the miseries of mankind, they bind themselves, as it were, freely so that they can help the world. Swikritan jagarbhavasa dehapashami drisham yapitam swalilayacha yena divya jivanam tam namami deva deva Ramakrishnam Ishwaram. There is a beautiful stotra, poem, in which he says, Swikritancha, happily he has accepted this birth. Happily he has taken upon himself this birth, and this divine leela he performed, knowing full well that is the infinite and the absolute. So Swami Brahmananda always used to soar in samadhi. He had to be brought down. There are so many instances of his life. When he was Bhuvaneshwar once in the mutt, he was moving up and down, mind is not coming down. So they're trying to entice him with a chillum of tobacco and some water. So Ramakrishna used to say, I'll now drink some water. Innocent desires he used to take so the mind will come down. Then one disciple used to constantly move with him and offer him something to eat or some tobacco. If he just missed that, again his mind will soar up. And then Ramakrishna cries, "Oh mother, I want to give them some spiritual knowledge. Please don't put me into samadhi." Same thing with Swami Vivekananda. How many times he cried, "I don't want samadhi, I don't want liberation." Because he had liberation already. He goes and cries to Ramakrishna, "Please, I want to be in Nirvikalpa Samadhi," absorbed in that samadhi and be lost to this world. Ramakrishna chides him. "What a low taste you have. I thought you will be like a big banyan tree, giving shelter to thousands of people who were tormented and scorched by the misery, the heat of the misery of the world. And you want your own mukti? Fie upon you. Chi, fie upon you." That means these people have not come for mukti. They want to give mukti to others. By a touch, by a sankalpa, they could give mukti. Therefore, whenever we look at the lives of these people, particularly Swami Brahmananda and Swami Vivekananda, whom we are discussing today, we should understand they were struggling to keep their mind down out of compassion. Shankara, the same thing. What was Shankara? You can see his life. When Kapalika wanted to give Narabali, he called out to Shankara, "See, if I give a bali of a Raja, a king, or a Yati, a sannyasin, I will get some tremendous powers. I can't get hold of a Raja. So will you please allow me?" So look at the compassion of the Acharya. These are not stories. Then he says, "You can give bali, but be careful, my disciple should not know." He lay down, and the Kapalika takes his sword about to kill him. Then suddenly Padmabada comes as a Narasimha Avatara and then tore him to pieces. The stories we read. But look at the significance of the story. For a Kapalika to have some mystical and some powers by which he can do mischievous acts, the Shiva Avatara, great Acharya, is willing to sacrifice his own body. For them, the body is nothing. For us, the body is everything, our enjoyments are everything. And he wanted to remove the poverty of that poor widow, just like a 5 or 6-year-old boy, and then prayed to Mother, "Mother, pour down wealth upon this poor, illiterate widow." The first action, I always tell people, the first action of Shankara is removal of poverty. Or the Bhashyas and Advaita, they come much later. So Shankara is not Advaita. Shankara is compassion. Alayam Karunalayam. So these great acharyas, great men of God, particularly Brahmananda and Shivananda, Swami Vivekananda is called Paramadayala, is infinitely compassionate. There's a story in Swami Brahmananda's life. It's an incident which happened, recorded. One of his disciples, whom he gave ashraya. Remember the ashraya vatsala, sharanagata vatsala. If we go and surrender to them, you may be bad, you may be good, you may be anything. Once you go and cry to them, "Please save me," immediately they give. Remember the statement in the Ramayana? Rama is sitting there and Vibhishana is come to seek refuge in him. So he is in the Akasha Marga, is coming, he is hanging there. Rama, being the democratic king, quickly calls a council of council. What should we do? How should we deal with Vibhishana? So many people saw so many things. Finally turns to Hanuman Mahavira. Hanuman says, "Oh Ramachandra, even if Ramana comes and says, 'I want your Sharanagati,' you have to give him. That is the dharma of an avatara." The famous statement in the Ramayana. "Sakrideva prapannaya tavasmai diyachate abhayam sarva bhutebhyo dadami etat vratam mama." This is my vrata. This is my vow. What is that? Even once if somebody comes and says, "Tavasmi, I am yours," then I have to give him abhaya. Sarva bhutebhyo abhayam dadami. I give fearlessness. I give them refuge. That is my vrata. Same thing Arjuna was told by Sri Krishna towards the end of the Bhagavad Gita, which is called Charama Shloka by the Ramanujacharya, the greatest shloka. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam braja aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami mashisha. Ramanuja has wonderful gadya trayam. There is one Sharanagati gadya in which he says, he reminds the Lord, O Lord, do you remember you promised when he came Rama? You said, Dadam yetat abhayam sarvabhutebhyo dadam yetat pratam mama aham tva sarvabhutebhyo mokshayishyami mashicha iti tavaiva muktam. Remember your promise? Don't go back on your promise. I have come and surrendered to you. You have to now give me. Swami Brahmananda, one of his disciples, he was very fond of him. Although that disciple was not able to follow the spiritual path, many times he was so much full of indiscipline. Everybody was angry with him. But Brahmananda said, poor fellow, he has taken refuge in me. Then Swami Sharadananda, who was the secretary at that time, he told Brahmananda, Raja, he was called Raja Maharaj. Because Swami Sri Ramakrishna said, Rakhal Rajbuddhi ache, Rajya chalate pare. His name was Rakhal. Rakhal has the wisdom of a king. He can run a kingdom, spiritual kingdom. Swamiji picked up this word and started calling him Raja. So he went to him and said, Raja, this boy is not following any routine. His mind is so restless. Please don't keep him here. He is unfit to be a sannyasi here. Let him go his way. Then Rajaman said, all right. They called a meeting. Swami Brahmananda presided over the meeting. It was decided that he should leave. And being the secretary, Saradan, they called him and said, you should go. I said, I myself want to go because I am unfit for this life, I know. But Brahmananda would not leave me. He is so compassionate. Then he left. Look at this. Tears will come to you when you remember these incidents. I can't speak about them without tears, so I very rarely talk about these subjects. Next day, early in the morning, Swami Brahmananda appears before Sharadanandaji and says, I have something to tell you. So I said, what happens? So early in the morning, you were well dressed up. Are you going somewhere? He brought a letter from his pocket and said, here is my resignation as the president of the order. He was the president at that time. Why? You see, that boy, we asked him to leave. I myself presided over the meeting. We did the right thing. This Sangha, this ashrama cannot keep him. This is true. But I have given refuge to him. He cannot be here, I know, but I can go and live with him. But I can't leave unless I leave the presidentship. So I resign my presidentship so that I can go and take care of him. Will you call it sacrifice? What will you call it? It can be compared only the Shiva drinking the poison. When all good things came, Narayana took away everything. Shiva and Narayana are two wonderful Hariharatma for Abhyudaya. Airavata came. It went to the Narayana's place. Kalpavriksha came. Indra took away Airavata, the horse, Uchchaishrava and so on. When Lakshmi herself came, Narayana took her away. When the Halahala Visha came, the poison, then Narayana is nowhere to be seen. So Devatas became terribly puzzled. What? Now they said only one fellow, that mad fellow, that Unmatta, Pitta, Pareshudi, Piramane in the Tamil, they say Devaram, it's called Pitta. He is a madman. So he is lying there. Said all the Devatas said, oh Shiva, please save us, save us. What is the problem? You have to help us. What should I do? Please drink this. I will drink. Why? For the good of the world, to save the world. Oh, what does it contain? It contains poison. And they gladly drank it. Why? Anything for the good of the world he will be able to do. So I'll close this verse. The stotra by Swami Vivekananda written on Shiva, as if Shiva is writing about himself. Durita dalana daksham daksha jadat tadosham kalita kalikaham kamra kakhlarakantam parahita karanaya prana pracheda pritam natanayana niyuktam nilakantham namama. Parahita karanaya prana pracheda pridam. For doing good to others, his own body, his mind, everything will give away. Dadichi Muni. They said if Dadichi Muni can give his backbone, then become Vajrayuda, then the Asuras can be easily tackled. So Indra comes to the Muni, please, I want some help from you. What do you want? I want your bones. Dadichi said, I'll be in Samadhi, take away my bones. So this is the statement. So those who have love in their heart for others, even their bone also they will give. Tirukural and Tiruvallur says, Anbu if you have, that means love, then Yenbu, your own bone also will give it to others. So these great lives, their spiritual realization, their samadhi is secondary. Their great compassion, the karuna which they had for removing the bondage of all of us, ordinary struggling souls. All that we can do is to go and cry to them, say, I am unable to save myself, please save me. And they shall save. He saved that Gajendra, that elephant. You remember that story? So Shankara has a beautiful verse which I chant very often. Artratrana parayanas bhagavan narayano me gatihi. Whenever you are in distress, Narayana is the only gati. Nakragrastabadam samudhrasagaram brahmadayo bhosura palyantamiti deenavakya deveshvashakteshu yaha ma shocheti rarakshanakrahanane chakrayuda shridhara artratrana parayanasya bhagavan narayano me gati. This poor elephant is crying, oh, please save me. It first called upon Indra, Varuna, all the devatas, nobody responded. They were incapable, only Lord alone. This is one lesson we should learn today on the sacred occasion. For anything, turn to the Lord. Cry to Him, call upon Him, and He shall respond. Have this faith. See, we have faith in so many useless things. So many wicked people in whom we have put faith. So many people we have faith. Without faith, life cannot go on. When our students used to ask, why by faith I will not have, etc. Then I tell him a story. Will you go to the salon for a shave? Many of these boys can't shave themselves. They go. Then they said, when you go to the salon and then he shaves you, then you tell the napit, the barber, sir, here, you please. If the barber simply puts his razor here, just like that, you are gone. But you are able to put full faith in that barber. Can't you believe the Supreme Lord? Try this. When you say, I'm a scientist, I'm a rationalist, why should I have faith? My counter question is, a scientist is a person who will not accept anything unless he has experienced and tested it. You test it first. A scientist will neither accept nor reject. Test. All of us can test this when we are in dire distress and pray to the Lord. Draupadi. Then look at that. It's not a mere story. That poor lady, the 5 husbands are sitting in front, Bhishmacharya, Dronacharya, and Karna is rejoicing, and Dushosana with Atatahasa is pulling. She is helpless lady, she is unable to do. Then it cries, oh, she is trying to save herself. No. Bho Krishna Achyuta Bho Kripalaya Hare Bho Pandavanam Sakhe Kwasi Suyodhana Tapahatam Bho Rakshama Maturam Ityukto Kshaya Vastra Samsutatanum Yopalayata Draupadim Artratrana Parayanasya Bhagavan Narayano me gati. Where are you? Where are you? Suyodhana Tapahatam. Such an extraordinarily elevated, pure lady, she is unable to pronounce Duryodhana. She is Suyodhana Tapahatam. Please save me. Kshaya Vastra he gave. He is the only gati. This has been proved again and again. These great lives of Swami Vivekananda, Brahmananda, and the host of the Rishis and Munis and incarnations, they come to prove the truth of this religion. It is possible. You pray to God, He shall help you through bhakti. Bhakti, Jnana, all of them mean the same thing. Don't make any distinction between Advaita, Advaita. All these only people who quarrel. But stop this quarrel. All of them are men of God, whether it's Ramanuja, whether it's Rashankara. They are commissioned by God to save humanity. It's just like a supermarket. You go there and pick out what you want. You go to a restaurant, pick out what you want to eat. So hundreds of thousands of varieties of practices are thrown to you. Practice all of them, practice any of them, and be blessed. Our whole life should be blessed by constantly remembering them. Today we had what is known as Leela Chintana. If you think of them, Smarana Arunachalam, they say, just by thinking of them, Kunti Devi says in the Bhagavata, the purpose of Krishna Avatara is to create hundreds of themes for meditation, dhyana, by remembering any of which man will get wisdom or mukti. So think of them, just saturate your mind and consciousness by so many incidents. The mind is restless. One way is to control the mind, that is yoga, chitta vritti nirodha, and that is almost impossible, as Arjuna himself said in the Gita, chanchalam mana Krishna pramati balavadridam. So it's impossible. So these Leela Chintana, the mind need not be controlled, let the mind need not be fixed on God. Allow God to travel with the mind. Mind is restless, moving, allow God, God, you also travel with me. You constantly keep the company of God. Ishvara Sannidhya. Practice the presence of God, constant remembrance of them. Mind will be saturated with these great ideas, and they are so sweet to remember. You read the Bhagavata, you read the Mahabharata, read the Ramayana, read the lives of Shankara, Ramanuja, and these great people, Ramakrishna, Sarada Devi, Brahmananda, Shiva, Vivekananda. Saturate yourself with these ideas, and you will feel great calm, elevation, and peace. May that peace come to all of us, is my prayer. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa.
Thank you very much, Swamiji. 90 minutes flew away. I didn't even realize how it happened, and I think all our viewers will share with the sentiment that we wanted to hear more and more about anecdotes from the life of Swami Brahmananda ji and Swami Vivekananda ji. It was a wonderful talk, Swamiji, and thank you very much on the behalf of all our audience and the entire Advaita Academy family. We thank you from the bottom of our heart for taking time and doing this session, Swami. Thank you very much. Viewers, with this, we come to a conclusion of this session. It was a very wonderful session, and we hope to organize more sessions under our theme, Life and Works of Advaita Acharyas, where we will invite Swamijis and Acharyas from various traditions to speak about different Acharyas in the past, their life, their contribution to this great spiritual tradition called Sanatana Dharma. With this brief comments, I conclude this session. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.